Hello, today is Thursday, June 18th, 2020. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. On today's podcast, we're going to take a look at how automation of service management is impacting enterprises. There's been a big drive over the last few years to deliver automation in IT service management. And today I have Ben Fox with me, one of TC2's managing directors, to talk about automation and how it is becoming an increasingly important component of managed network services. Hey Ben, thanks for joining me today. Maybe a good starting point is to level set on what automation of service management really means.
Hi Joe, yes. Let's start there. So at its simplest level, automation is really nothing more than simply replacing work that a human being would otherwise have to do. So it's software and it's tools that can perform repeatable tasks and processes without manual intervention or with less manual intervention or simply with less manual steps in the process. So a good example of that is, for instance, having one click that kicks off a script to configure a switch port. So that not only eliminates all the multiple keystrokes, but also prevents human errors in that configuration process. And of course, the benefits, I think, are pretty self-evident. Manual intervention is costly and it's time-consuming and it can be slow. So automation reduces cost and it completes tasks and it completes requests far more quickly. And Joe, who doesn't like things that are faster and cheaper?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've mentioned before on these podcasts that I'm a big fan of smart home technology, like being able to automate the task of turning on your home sound system by asking your Google Assistant. But that's not what you're talking about. I know, Ben, that you work a lot on outsourcing and managed service procurements and deals. So has automation become a key focus in those projects?
Yes, it certainly has and increasingly is. So automation is table stakes now to a certain extent in outsourcing and managed services deals. And actually, I think achieving and increasing automation has become a key objective and driver for outsourcing and managed services deals in of itself. So outsourcing, in our experience, has always been about finding a partner that is better placed to deliver your target end state more quickly and with less investment and with less risk than an enterprise could deliver all by itself. So we've seen how that desired end state has evolved over the years. Many years ago, objectives just as simple as delivering consistent ITIL processes globally and improved service levels have sort of evolved over time to things such as delivering offshore delivery models. But now we're seeing that objective being to achieve highly automated service management and delivery. So we're seeing enterprises that are seeking service provider partners that have deep expertise in delivering automation, and that can hence deliver automation for the customer far more quickly and efficiently and smoothly than the customer could deliver automation by themselves.
So generally, how are the suppliers doing in meeting that objective of delivering service automation?
So interestingly, we see a wide spectrum in the service provider market in this area. We see service providers that clearly regard automation as a foundational building block of the services that they provide, all the way to service providers that almost only mention it in passing and that you really have to probe to find out how automation is built into their customer solutions. And we found that this is particularly true in managed network services. So in managed network services, we see a far, far greater focus on automation from system integrators that have a strong heritage in other IT service towers, such as service desk and PC support and end user services, and who are now bringing their experience in delivering automation in those areas over to managed network services. And we do see, I must say, that the more traditional players in managed network services, including the carriers, are playing catch up a bit and are certainly not yet putting automation at the heart of their service offerings and solutions that they're presenting to customers to the same degree. And actually one of the things that means, of course, that it's really important in managed network services procurements to widen your bidder list beyond just the carriers to also include some of those systems integrators so that you guarantee you have some bids with a really strong automation play.
I suppose if a company is looking at managed service, they want a provider that can do things better and maybe cheaper than the company can do themselves. So how do these differences between service providers show up in managed network services procurements?
Yeah, great question, Joe. So other than the obvious, which is some service providers simply spend more time talking about the automation that they will bring, one of the key indicators that we see is that those service providers that are really focused on automation have a particular focus during the sales process on analyzing customer ticket data and actually identifying and proposing the types and the volumes of tickets and tasks that they will automate based on the customer's unique situation and starting point. And we see that service providers that have that really strong focus on automation are really hungry to get your ticket data and actually solution the degree of automation that they will deliver, all as part of the sales process. And that seems to be extremely compelling for potential customers, but it isn't something that we see all service providers doing.
So the way you've described it, all this automation sounds great, but what are some of the tangible outcomes for enterprise deals?
So apart from the general outcome of lower costs, because automation is cheaper than doing work manually, of course, I think there are two key areas where customers should be locking in the outcomes of automation in the managed services deals. So firstly, be looking to lock in significant productivity gains over the course of a contract term. So in a nutshell, service providers should commit to reduce pricing over the term of the agreement as automation is increasingly implemented and continues to be extended and augmented over that contract term. And you should understand that pricing curve during the RFP process. And of course, think about how to model and compare different pricing curves under different bids. And then secondly, you should expect improved performance underwritten by corresponding service level commitments. So for example, if you're removing or you're reducing manual intervention from certain basic types of requests, then one, the time for such requests to be completed should be reduced. And two, error rates should be largely eliminated because everything's automatic now. So this allows those more innovative service providers to commit to stronger service levels underwritten with robust service credits. And additional to that, if automation succeeds in achieving shift left, as the industry calls it, which is essentially resolving tickets either completely automatically or at a lower level of manual intervention. So think about resolving a ticket at level 2 without needing to escalate to level 3, level 4. So if all that is true and achieved, then your incident resolution time should also reduce. And then furthermore, one of the benefits of automation and the advanced tool sets that are being deployed these days is there is a far greater capacity for proactive actions to be taken to avoid failures and incidents before they even happen. So for some time, we've had monitoring tools that have the capability to flag that a network device is having problems, even if it hasn't fallen over yet. But NOC and support teams are often so busy dealing with actual incidents and requests that proactively taking action to prevent such predicted issues may simply not happen. They don't have the time. But when the necessary remediation to eliminate the problem is implemented via an automation script, it's much easier to avoid that potential incident. And so accordingly, your uptime should increase and your incident volumes should decrease.
So I'm guessing that this isn't all completely hands-off for the customer. There's some role that the customer needs to play in successful implementations, right?
Yeah, definitely. Firstly, there is almost always some integration that needs to be implemented between whatever automation tool set the service provider is bringing and the customer's tools, not least the customer's ITSM platform. So think platforms such as ServiceNow. In fact, there can be significant integration development work that really shouldn't be underestimated. There are also typically process integrations and changes that are needed to achieve and maximize this automation. So there are some tasks that can be completely replaced with an automation script, but other tasks and type of tickets will only be partially automated, which of course still reduces manual work and intervention. But that means the existing process needs to be modified to reflect the steps that can be automated. So a good example of that is a customer's change management and approval process, which will always have some degree of manual intervention. So essentially, you really have to partner with your service provider on identifying the processes and the work that can be automated and start with a reasonable list at the start of the contract, but then continually add additional automations throughout the term.
All right, Ben, we're almost out of time. Do you have any final tips or advice that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll just share a couple really related to a client's RFP processes in this area. So the first one is be ready to share your historical ticket data as part of the RFP process. It's ideal, I think, to collate the data and include it proactively as an appendix in your RFP. And the ticket data really allows the service providers to add color to the automation that they're proposing for you as part of their solution. And then secondly, make sure that the automation that the service providers are describing and pitching to you is clearly reflected in the pricing constructs and the service levels with ongoing improvements to both of those on a year-over-year basis. Ultimately, automation is the how of how improvements are delivered. But you want to contract for the outcome of the automation, which is that continual pricing and that service level improvements. So contract for the outcome more so than how that outcome is delivered.
Okay, thanks, Ben. This has been a really good discussion. Now, if you'd like to learn more about automation and outsourcing and managed service deals, or if you have other ICT needs, you can contact Ben, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues by giving us a call or dropping us an email. You can also stay current by checking out our websites, following us on LinkedIn, and of course by subscribing to our Staying Connected podcast.